The mining station hung in space like a forgotten promise, its hull scarred by micrometeorite impacts and poor decisions. Myra pressed her palm against the observation window, watching her reflection fragment across the reinforced glass. Even here, in the quiet dark between star systems, she couldn't escape the wrongness of her own face. Her people, the crystalli, were beings of perfect geometric beauty. Their features formed flawless symmetrical patterns. Their skin refracted light into rainbows of predetermined harmony. They were living prisms, each one a testament to evolutionary perfection. Myra was supposed to be one of them. Instead, her crystalline structure grew asymmetrical, jagged in places where it should be smooth. Light bent around her face in chaotic patterns, creating auroras when there should be simple, elegant refractions. She was a shattered mirror among perfect glass. "You're doing that thing again," Ven 9 announced, hovering into the observation deck with all the grace of a drunk butterfly. The maintenance bot was a sphere of dented metal with too many appendages and an attitude problem. The brooding thing. The staring dash at dash your dash reflection dash, while dash contemplating dash your dash cosmic insignificance thing. "I wasn't brooding," Myra lied, turning away from the window. Her fingers left crystalline smudges on the glass, another reminder of her difference. Normal crystalli didn't leave marks. Their touch was clean, precise, perfect. Sure, and I'm not held together by spite and discount welding. Ven 9 rotated his optical sensor in what passed for an eye roll. "You've been out here for 3 cycles, boss. 3 cycles of self-imposed exile, talking to a bot with delusions of grandeur, and eating nutrient paste that tastes like regret. The paste doesn't taste like anything." "Exactly. Regret is flavorless." Myra allowed herself the ghost of a smile. She'd found Ven 9 in the station's cargo bay when she first arrived, deactivated and covered in dust. His previous owners had apparently abandoned him for having too much personality. She understood the feeling. The station had been her refuge for those 3 cycles, a decommissioned mining facility orbiting a dead moon in a sector that most navigation charts didn't bother including. It was technically owned by the Terran Mining Consortium, but they'd written it off years ago, after the mineral deposits proved less valuable than projected. Mira had purchased it through a series of anonymous transactions, using the last of her savings to buy a place where no one would look for her dot, no one from home. Anyway, she'd left her homeworld of Prisma after the last incident. The memory still burned, bright and sharp as the light through her malformed features. The Harmony Festival, where young crystalli were presented to society, where suitors were chosen, where futures were decided by the elegance of one's refractions. Mira had stood in the hall of perfect light, and when the ceremonial beams had passed through her, the patterns had been all wrong. Instead of the traditional mandala of order and beauty, her refractions had created something wild, something chaotic and strange. The silence had been worse than laughter. The way the crowd had simply stopped, their perfect faces frozen in expressions of polite horror. Her mother's disappointment, her father's shame, and Kellis, her sister, perfect beautiful Kellis, turning away as if Mira carried a contagious disease. "Temperature fluctuation in Sector 7, Ven 9 reported, interrupting her thoughts. "The heating coils are acting up again. Want me to fix it? Or should we just accept our fate as popsicles?" "I'll handle it." Mira was grateful for the distraction. She made her way through the narrow corridors, her footsteps echoing in the empty spaces. The station was too large for one person and one dysfunctional bot, but she preferred the emptiness. Empty meant alone. Alone meant safe. She was halfway to Sector 7 when the proximity alarm screamed. Mira froze, her crystalline features catching the emergency lights and scattering them in panicked patterns across the walls. The proximity alarm hadn't sounded once in 3 cycles. Nothing came out this far. Nothing had any reason to. "Ven, what is that?" She called, already running back toward the command center. Analyzing now. And oh, this is not good. The bot's voice lost its usual sarcasm. We've got an object on approach vector. Fast, hot, and falling apart. Mira reached the command center and pulled up the scanner display. A ship, or what was left of one, trailing debris and atmosphere. No, not a ship. An escape pod. The signature was Terran. The trajectory was catastrophic, and the life signs were weak but present. It's going to impact on the moon's surface, Ven 9 calculated. 3 minutes to collision. Survival probability of occupant is, let's call it optimistic fiction. Myra's hand hovered over the console. Every instinct told her to ignore it. She'd come here to be alone, to avoid complications, to hide from a universe that had made it clear she didn't fit. Rescuing someone meant exposure. It meant interaction. It meant someone would see her. The life sign on the scanner flickered. Growing weaker. We're not equipped for rescue operations, she said. But her fingers were already moving across the controls, activating the station's tractor beam. The beam might not even reach that far. Probably won't, Ven 9 agreed. But you're going to try anyway, because despite your commitment to being a tragic hermit, you're annoyingly decent. The tractor beam reached out like a desperate hand, straining against distance and physics. The pod was tumbling, its trajectory bent by the moon's weak gravity. Mira adjusted the beam's frequency, compensating for the spin, her crystalline fingers dancing across controls that most of her species would never touch. Technical work was beneath the crystallay. They were beings of art and philosophy, not maintenance and machinery. The beam caught the pod with a shudder that ran through the entire station. Myra fought the controls, muscles straining as she gradually slowed the pod's descent, redirecting it toward the station's small docking bay. It was graceless, brutal work, and she was breathing hard by the time the pod settled onto the bay floor with a grinding crash. Life signs still present, Ven 9 reported. Congratulations, your charitable impulse hasn't immediately resulted in death. There's still time, though. Myra grabbed an emergency kit and made her way to the docking bay. Through the reinforced window, she could see the pod, its hull scorched black, steam hissing from a dozen cracks. The Terran design was crude but effective. Built for survival rather than elegance. She cycled the airlock and approached the pod cautiously. The manual release was on the exterior, a simple lever that she had to hit twice before it engaged. The hatch cracked open with a hiss of escaping air, and steam billowed out, obscuring everything. Myra waved it away, peering into the dim interior. A human male was strapped into the emergency seat, his head lolled to one side, blood crusting at his temple. He wore the casual jumpsuit of a civilian freighter crew, patched and worn. His face was lean, weathered, with lines around his eyes that suggested someone who smiled often. She checked his pulse, human physiology. She'd studied it once, finding it strong but irregular. Concussion, probably, along with various impact injuries. Nothing immediately fatal if treated quickly. "All right, human," she muttered, working to release his restraints. "Let's get you somewhere less likely to explode." He was heavier than she expected. Solid muscle and bone where crystallay were lighter, built for grace rather than strength. She managed to drag him out of the pod and onto a transport sled, trying not to notice the way his hand flopped against her arm. Warm and startlingly alive. Ven 9 met her at the medical bay, such as it was. The station's medical facilities were minimal, designed for treating minor injuries among mining crews, not for serious trauma. Mira laid the human on the examination table and began running diagnostics, her hands moving through the familiar routines she'd learned from educational programs during her isolation. "Vitals are stabilizing," she reported. More to herself and to Ven 9. No internal bleeding detected. Concussion is moderate. He'll need rest and monitoring. And then he leaves, right? Ven 9 asked pointedly. We save his life, patch him up, send him on his way. Return to our scheduled programming of isolation and questionable life choices. Right, Myra agreed. But she found herself looking at the human's face, peaceful in unconsciousness. He would wake up eventually. He would see her. And then what? The familiar fear coiled in her chest. She'd seen how her own people reacted to her appearance. How would an alien species respond? She turned away, busying herself with preparing medication and checking the medical equipment. It didn't matter how he reacted. He was a temporary complication. She would help him recover, help him repair his ship if possible, and then he would leave. Everything would return to normal. The human groaned, a soft sound that made her turn back despite herself. His eyes were still closed, but his breathing had changed, becoming deeper, more regular. He would wake soon. Myra found herself checking her reflection in a dark monitor screen, seeing the same fractured features she always saw. The irregular angles, the chaotic light refractions, all the imperfections that had driven her to this isolated corner of space. She wondered what he would see when he opened his eyes. Horror? Confusion? Polite disgust? She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself she didn't care. She was lying. The human woke up screaming about potatoes. No, the shipment was supposed to be red potatoes. He shouted, bolting upright on the medical table with wild eyes. The restaurant on Titan specifically ordered. He stopped, blinking rapidly, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. This isn't the cargo bay. Myra stood frozen in the doorway, medical supplies clutched in her hands. She'd been preparing for this moment, rehearsing possible reactions in her mind. She had not prepared for potatoes. You're awake, she said carefully, staying near the exit. You were in an escape pod. Your ship? Gone, yeah. He rubbed his face, wincing as his fingers found the bandage at his temple. Reactor failure. Had about 30 seconds to evacuate before the whole thing turned into a very expensive firework. He focused on her then, really looking, and Myra braced herself for the familiar expression of discomfort. Instead, his face broke into a crooked smile. Well, this is either the afterlife or the best rescue I've ever had. I'm Owen, by the way. Owen Carrick, former owner of the Wandering Fool. Current owner of absolutely nothing except a splitting headache. Myra, she replied, still waiting for the other reaction, the one where he noticed the wrongness of her features. You're on Station 47. Outer Rim. You've been unconscious for 6 hours. 6 hours? Owen swung his legs off the table, moving too quickly and immediately regretting it. His face went pale. Okay, note to self. Gravity still exists, and my brain is angry about it. You need to rest, Myra said, stepping forward instinctively before catching herself. You have a concussion. Moving too quickly could make me pass out again? Way ahead of you. But he was looking at her with open curiosity now, his gaze traveling across her crystalline features. Myra felt her skin prickle, light refracting through her at uncomfortable angles. Here it came. The stare. The awkward questions. The careful distance. Your crystallay, Owen said, his tone brightening with recognition. I've read about your species. The living prism people. That's incredible. I'm not, Myra started, then stopped. How did she explain? I'm the mistake. The broken one. The reason crystallay parents whisper warnings to their children about genetic imperfections. I'm not a good example of my species. Owen tilted his head, and she hated how the movement reminded her of the way scholars examined flawed specimens. Why not? Because I look like this. The words came out harder than she intended. She gestured at her face, at the asymmetrical angles that caused light to scatter in chaotic patterns, instead of perfect geometric displays. I'm malformed, imperfect. Silence stretched between them. Mira prepared herself for agreement, for polite sympathy, for the inevitable awkwardness. Owen laughed. Not cruel laughter, but genuine amusement, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Malformed? Are you serious? You're like someone took starlight and taught it to have cheekbones. I've hauled cargo across half the known systems, and I've never seen anything like you. The temperature in the medical bay dropped 3 degrees. Frost formed on the nearest console. Myra's hands clenched, light sparking through her knuckles in agitated bursts. Don't what? Owen's smile faded, replaced by confusion. I was just, don't mock me. Her voice was ice. I've heard it before. Oh, how interesting. How unique. It's just another way of saying wrong. I wasn't. Owen stood up despite the obvious pain, holding up his hands. Hey, I'm serious. I think you're beautiful. And I'm not great at mockery. Ask anyone. I once tried to insult a guy and accidentally complimented his mother's cooking for 10 minutes. You can't think that. Myra backed toward the door. You don't know anything about Crystal A standards. You don't understand what you're looking at. You're right, I don't. Owen took a careful step forward. But I know what I see, and what I see is someone who pulled me out of a death trap and fixed me up even though I'm a complete stranger. Someone who's probably been alone out here for way too long, judging by the state of this station. And someone who has this thing where light just dances around her like it can't decide which way to go. And honestly, that's the coolest thing I've seen all year. The light doesn't dance, Myra said stiffly. It refracts incorrectly due to structural abnormalities in my crystalline composition. Sure, if you want to be boring about it. Owen's grin returned. Or you could accept that maybe your people's definition of correct is overrated. Ven 9 chose that moment to hover into the medical bay, his optical sensor swiveling between them. Oh good, the human is conscious and already causing emotional complications. This is exactly what I warned you about. You have a sarcastic robot, Owen observed. That's either really sad or really fun. Both. Myra and Ven 9 said in unison. Owen laughed again, and Mira felt something unfamiliar twist in her chest. When was the last time someone had laughed in her presence without it being at her expense? When was the last time someone had looked at her like she was just a person? So, Owen said, settling back onto the medical table with a grunt. What's the damage? And please tell me my escape pod is in better shape than I am. Myra seized the change of subject gratefully. Your pod is functional but grounded. The heat shielding is compromised, the main thruster is fused, and the life support system is running on backup cells that have maybe 48 hours left. Fantastic. And my chances of repairing it? Low. The station has minimal parts, and most of them are incompatible with Terran systems. She pulled up a diagnostic display on the nearest console. Your best option is to send a distress signal and wait for pickup. From out here? Owen whistled low. That could take weeks. Months, if I'm unlucky. I could boost the signal, Myra offered, then wondered why she was offering. Route it through the station's main array. Someone would hear it eventually. Eventually. Owen studied her for a long moment. That doesn't sound like you want me here. I don't. Myra stopped, choosing her words carefully. I came here for solitude. For privacy. Having someone else on the station is complicated. Complicated how? Am I going to eat your food? Mess up your carefully organized isolation? You're going to see me, Myra said quietly. Every day. Until you leave. And eventually you'll understand what I am, and you'll look at me the way everyone else does. Owen's expression softened. The way you think everyone looks at you, you mean. Before Mira could respond, an alarm blared through the station. Ven 9 spun in agitated circles. Hull breach detected. Sector 4. Looks like our guest's dramatic entrance stressed the station's structural integrity more than we thought. How bad? Mira was already moving, her personal discomfort forgotten in the face of immediate crisis. Bad enough that we're losing atmosphere. Good enough that we have about 20 minutes before it becomes a serious problem. I can help, Owen said, sliding off the table despite Myra's protest. I've patched more hull breaches than I've had hot meals. Which admittedly says concerning things about my career choices. You're injured, and you're short-handed. Owen grabbed an emergency suit from the locker. Besides, if this station falls apart, we both die, and that would make your rescue efforts pretty pointless. Mira wanted to argue, but he was right. She nodded curtly. Sector 4. Follow me and try not to pass out. They worked in synchronized silence, their movements finding a rhythm despite being strangers. Owen's hands were steady as he welded patch plates over the breach, while Mira monitored structural integrity and rerouted power to the damaged sector's emergency systems. He was competent, she realized. More than competent. His casual demeanor hid someone who knew his way around spacecraft systems. So how does someone end up alone on a forgotten station? Owen asked, his voice crackling through the suit's calm. That's not exactly a career path they advertise at university. It's a long story, Myra said. We've got at least 15 more minutes of welding. I'm not going anywhere. Mira adjusted a power coupling, buying herself time. My people value perfection. Physical, intellectual, artistic. I don't meet those standards. Because of the light thing? Because of everything. The words came easier than she expected. The way I look. The way I refract. At the Harmony Festival, they shine ceremonial light through young crystallet. It's supposed to create beautiful patterns. Mine created chaos. Chaos can be beautiful, Owen said quietly. Not to my people. Then your people need better taste. Owen finished the last weld and examined his work. Patch is holding. Want to tell me the rest while we make sure this station doesn't explode? There's not much more to tell. I embarrassed my family. I left. I came here. And you've been alone ever since. It wasn't a question. That's pathetic? Myra supplied bitterly. Lonely, Owen corrected. There's a difference. They made their way back to the main section of the station, checking seals and monitoring systems. The breach was sealed, the crisis averted, but Myra felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with hull integrity. Thank you, she said finally, for helping. Thank you for not letting me die in a frozen wasteland, Owen replied. We make a good team. Ven 9 met them in the corridor, hovering with what might have been approval. The human is less useless than anticipated. I'm adjusting his survival probability upward by 3%. Your confidence is overwhelming, Owen said dryly. Over the next few days? Owen's presence became less intrusive and more ... present. He had a talent for filling silence without overwhelming it, for finding tasks that needed doing without being asked. He repaired a malfunctioning air recycler, reorganized the storage bay with surprising efficiency, and somehow convinced Ven 9 that his jokes were funny. Myra caught herself watching him work, admiring the easy confidence in his movements. He approached problems like puzzles to solve rather than obstacles to overcome, and he kept looking at her like she was normal, like her fractured light patterns were just another interesting feature rather than a flaw to overlook. You're staring again, Ven 9 commented one evening, after Owen had retired to the makeshift quarters they'd set up for him. I'm observing, Myra corrected. You're developing feelings. It's in my emotional analysis database. You exhibit all the classic symptoms. Increased monitoring of the subject. Subtle changes in vocal patterns when addressing him. And that thing you do where you tilt your head and forget. You're supposed to be a tragic loner. I don't do that. You're doing it right now. Myra forced herself to look away from the direction of Owen's quarters. It doesn't matter. He'll leave eventually. Everyone does. Maybe, Van Nine said, in a tone that suggested he didn't believe it at all. Or maybe he's exactly as stupid as you are, and he'll find a reason to stay.